Hello, everyone. It's possible that a few might join us as we proceed, but I'd like to go ahead and get started. My name is Chad Swantz. I am a patent attorney with Swantz in Omaha, Nebraska, and I have been practicing intellectual property law, which includes trademark law and patent law, for about 20 years. Today, I would like to virtually cover a topic that gets presented to me in a number of different fashions, but relates to how to select your name and trademark. One of the things that's really impacted the development of names and branding is the amount of business growth that has been possible, especially over the last few years. In the last 3 years, the number of small businesses in the United States has grown from 29.6 million businesses each year to up to 31.7 million, according to the Small Business Association. And this is significant in a lot of ways. One, it means that small business growth is still continuing to develop even through the pandemic, but it has an impact on those that are considering entering the field or starting a new business. And that impact is primarily on the basis of a name. With a large number of businesses, a business name can be a key differentiator. And the business name might increase the chance that any given name may already be in use. And that obviously increases the likelihood of a trademark infringement. And we're going to cover what that might mean and how that situation might present itself later in the presentation. Finally, we want that business name to be easily identified through search engine results, as we are now in a digital economy, and a lot of our customers are going to learn about our new businesses through the internet. While I didn't cover it in the start of the program, if any of you have questions, please feel free to use the Q&A tab on the Zoom link, or at the end of the conference, we'll definitely open it up to questions and a discussion if you desire. So, importance of a business name. Obviously, the decision involved in developing a business name has a lot of kind of individual factors. And one of the things that we want to do is we want to distinguish ourselves. And in some respects, our business is kind of like a child, and that name is of critical importance, and there's a strong value associated with it. And I think that's wonderful, and it should be developed. However, what I'd like to present today is there's a number of factors that we should consider in trying to select that business name. And when I began research in this area, one of the things that I always thought was, what difference does it make that, what that business might be called? Is it, if Google was called George and the business operations and its services were the same, wouldn't it still be a very successful company? And I think in that example, I think it probably would be. However, as I did some research in this area, I found that the business name and the type of name can have an impact upon the success of a venture. In fact, the Society of Personal and Social Psychology, Inc. discovered stocks with easier to pronounce names outperformed those with names that are more difficult to pronounce. So let that kind of sink in. If we can all kind of understand how to pronounce a name, like Google, you know, that is going to breed a degree of familiarity and already a level of trust. Whereas oftentimes, you know, some drug names that might be more difficult to pronounce, you know, there might be a level of fear associated with that drug. And it is believed that, according to the Department of Psychology at the University of Michigan, that low processing fluency may leave an impression of unfamiliarity, which can have a translation to a feeling of danger. So, kind of reflecting on all of those things, what kind of guidance can we get for our business name selection process? A short, simple name, which is easy to pronounce, may reduce a barrier to success of a venture. And so, you know, when you're considering business names, you know, try to think about it in those terms. Short, maybe less than 10 letters, maybe less than 8 letters. Simple name, maybe 2-3 syllables at the max. Easy to pronounce. Once you see it, you kind of understand it, it feels comfortable. So keep that in mind. Additionally, a name that most people believe has a single spelling may be preferred to names that are susceptible to multiple spellings. So just kind of an example, you know, say I have a startup company aimed at bringing farm goods direct to customers, could adopt a name such as Plow, P-L-O-W. And that's kind of a good name in the sense that it follows our original guidance of it's short, simple, easy to pronounce. However, the one drawback associated with that name is that there could be an alternative spelling such as Plow, P-L-O-U-G-H, and that might negatively affect search engine identification and brand acceptance if a general customer isn't quite aware of the exact spelling. That could reduce your ability to effectively achieve search engine optimization that you might desire. So, what are some examples of some spellings that can have some alternatives? You know, obviously, the phonetic sounds in the English language, C and K. So, you know, Coca-Cola, as used with C's, could be interpreted as Coca-Cola with K's. F and PH have a similar sound and possible spelling. So Facebook versus Facebook, P-H-A-C-E-B-O-O-K. Finally, X and CKS. Fox News versus Fox, F-O-C-K-S, News. And so those are just some things to kind of think about in the development of name is, can we, in development of our name and our use, is it something that most people are going to look at and they're going to spell the same way each and every time? Obviously, some examples of some simple names with a preferred single spelling. Google, like we mentioned before, Walmart, Amazon. All of these are words that are, in the case of Walmart, is seven characters or 7 letters. Amazon, Google are 6, very easy to spell. Amazon is the only 3-syllable word. And so obviously these are huge brands that are known worldwide. And the reason that they're such big companies and there's such brand awareness is they have incredible services and a market reach. But recognize that that their name may have a positive impact upon their growth. So, kind of at this time, I'd just like to kind of summarize the first kind of constraint in developing a name. Generally, our guidance would lend us to go to a short, simple name, easy to pronounce, and can be readily accepted as a single spelling. The next constraint that we're going to discuss is trademark considerations. There's in the sign-up log for this presentation, I noticed that some people had some questions about trademark law, and my colleague Scott Ringenberg presented a trademark webinar a few weeks ago, and I'm going to touch on a few of the major aspects of trademark considerations as it relates to selecting a brand name. But for those of you that might want some additional information, we'd be happy to share the previous webinar with you that goes into a little more detail for the trademark law. So, for those of you that aren't familiar with trademarks at a high level, a trademark refers to any word, phrase, symbol, logo, design, or even smells that identifies and distinguishes the source of the goods from one party from those of others. So Nike is obviously a brand associated with shoes and apparel. So Nike would refer to that word, and that word is a trademark of their company. However, the swoosh symbol that's present on the shoes and many of its apparel designs, that would be its logo. And so both of those trademarks are identifiers of Nike's shoes and apparel goods. A service mark is what distinguishes the source of a service rather than goods. So if I'm a legal service provider, and I had a mark associated with my legal services, that would be technically referred to as a service mark. However, the term trademark is often used in a general sense to refer to both trademarks and service marks. So why does trademark considerations impact name selection? Well, one, A name selection should avoid trademark infringement from a third party. And what that means is we do not want to have a brand name that is too closely similar to create a likelihood of confusion with a third party. The other consideration is that the name selection may be based on a possibility of developing and securing trademark rights. So there's kind of two factors in play. One, we don't want to infringe anybody else's trademarks. And possibly we want to develop a name in which we can develop your own trademark rights, because that might be able to then prevent others from using a similar name to sell similar goods and services. What happens when we've been found to infringe another party's trademark? A lot of problems. One, you might be required to change your name. You may be required to change your domain name. You may be forced to change your physical signage, your social media handles, and marketing materials. And I've worked with clients over the years, and this has cost thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars to make that change occur. And obviously that comes with a huge loss of goodwill. And so one of the things, if I can kind of take from this discussion today is we really want to stay away from anything that might be concerning to a third party. And how do we avoid such a situation? We're going to want to do a trademark search of proposed name, or maybe of several proposed names. And when we do that search, we can do it through the trademark office, and we can also use a Google search or other search engines and just kind of try to see what other businesses or products or services might be available that have a similar sounding name. And then, it's always a good advice, in my view, to review those results with an attorney, because that person might be able to assess the risk and go forward with it. And there's times when others might be willing to take a risk, but at least you have a way to kind of assess that risk and build that into your business development. And so that's always something I think to try to consider, as you move forward. The other side of it is, considering a name in which trademark rights might be developed and might be possible, that provides an ability to prohibit others from using the same mark or another mark that is sufficiently similar in appearance, sound, or meaning that there would be a likelihood of confusion among customers regarding the source of the products or services associated with the mark. And so that provides some strength in the business arena or the market that you're involved in, that another party isn't going to be able to come in and use a similar name as your proposed name and try to be able to trade off your goodwill that you've established with your customers. So, in order to get a trademark, what are the requirements? Number one, it must be distinctive, which is kind of a legal term for means it needs to be unique. There's three kind of types of marks that will describe that are inherently distinctive, and those include arbitrary marks, fanciful marks, and suggestive marks. Descriptive marks, geographic names, and surnames are not inherently distinctive and can only be protected if they have shown to have attained distinctiveness through use. So what does that mean? If I want to describe my legal business as patent law firm, that's a descriptive type of name, and that's going to be difficult to develop any trademark rights. A geographic name would be like if I called myself Nebraska Patent Law Firm. Nebraska is a geographic name, and the trademark office is not going to allow me to get ownership of a geographic name unless there's a way that we've developed some secondary meaning. I've used it for a really long time. But even then, if the name sounds like something that really describes the type of goods and services that you provide or where it's located, it's going to be really difficult to achieve trademark registration. Generic terms are unpredictable and can never function as a trademark. So once a word becomes generic, it is lost for trademark purposes. So we'll cover what are examples of some generic marks shortly. So arbitrary marks. Those are the type of marks that use words that are in common use but bear no relationship to the associated goods. Apple for computers, Tide for detergent, Monster for energy drinks. Fanciful marks. These are composed of originally coined terms. And as a trademark attorney, when I'm working with clients, these are my favorite to work with because generally speaking, they can be registered with the trademark office in the most easiest and fashion, and it's very unlikely that there's ever going to be any objection from any other third party. And it's kind of fun to make up a new word. And obviously, the drug companies are very proficient in developing new names. But some examples of fanciful marks: Xerox for copiers, Pepsi for soft drinks, and Lexus for automobiles. Those are words in the English language that didn't have any meaning. And for example, if you were to Google a originally coined term today, you wouldn't get any results. And so that provides a lot of comfort in the sense that you're most likely not going to run into any kind of trademark issues. Suggestive marks are marks that suggest some quality or character of the associated goods, but not so explicitly that no imagination is needed to determine the nature of the goods. And examples of these types of marks would be Netflix for online media content, KitchenAid for cooking products, and finally Microsoft for computer hardware and software products. Now, as we kind of mentioned, so the arbitrary, suggestive, and fanciful marks, those generally can be registered. Descriptive marks are those that describe the qualities, ingredients, or characteristics of the products or services with which the marks are used. And trademark registration is going to be difficult unless there's secondary meaning. And secondary meaning is a legal term, which means that maybe you've used it for a really long period of time so that your customer base has come to know that even though it's a descriptive mark, they know the actual provider of those goods or services. A couple of examples of descriptive marks would be downtown diner for a restaurant and possibly spicy red for hot sauce. Generic marks, a generic term is a common group or class name to which a particular product belongs. And this is one that can never be trademarked for the identified goods. So an example might be the bar. Now, on the other side of it, while generic marks aren't necessarily good for trying to get a trademark rights or develop trademark rights, generally speaking, if you want to use the name that happens to be a generic mark, it's likely that you won't run into any third-party trademark issues because those trademark rights aren't going to be available to another party as well. So, if I have a neighborhood bar and I want to call it the bar, that's obviously a very generic term. It's not going to develop any strong trademark rights, but it might be okay if that's not important to you as a business owner. Another example might be the crowbar, which includes a component of a trademark, but will generally be required to be disclaimed. Finally, otherwise distinctive marks can become generic unless they're properly policed, i.e. Kleenex, escalator, where those used to be trademarked names, but the way they were used as general products, now they've kind of lost their individual trademark rights. And so while Kleenex would prefer that you refer to tissues, most people may just ask, can I have a Kleenex? And it refer to any type of brand of tissue. So we've kind of gone through the kind of second factor associated with the name selection, and that's the trademark considerations. And so now we're going to kind of conclude with the third factor, and that is domain name and SEO considerations. And it looks like I just got a question that I'm going to hold on to until the end of the discussion because it's a great question, but I want to cover it in full detail after we've discussed all of the discussion. So once again, the third factor is domain name and SEO considerations. And for those of you that might not be aware, SEO stands for Search Engine Optimization. And what that means is that when a Google search or another search engine is employed and a search is performed, it's important that your company shows up on the first page of those search engine results, because studies have been done that if you're on that third page, you're not going to necessarily be identified by potential customers and clients. So you want to be as high on those results, just kind of below the paid advertisements as possible. And the way that we can ensure that that is being done is to make sure that our domain name is available and that our name isn't overly descriptive. So, domain name availability. Once again, this is kind of the third factor. So we have our short, simple name. We have made sure that we're not going to run afoul of any third-party trademark rights. And now we also want to ensure that it's available on preferably a .com top-level domain, because that way, we're consistently using the name across all our platforms, our email addresses, our web address, our name, all of it is being consistently used towards that one particular name, and that generates consistency and more awareness. Oftentimes, marketing professionals may desire a descriptive name to increase immediate awareness of the goods and services. However, I want to caution that sometimes an overly descriptive name may create trademark and search engine optimization problems. For example, descriptive names may not provide optimal search engine results. So going back to our example before of a descriptive trademark, a restaurant called Downtown Diner may be considered to be overly descriptive and may not allow development of trademark rights, nor provide search engine results that will improve customer identification of your business. And I think we can all understand why that might occur. If I am trying to find Downtown Diner as my key terms, that's going to present some results of possibly all types of diners located all over the city, and it may not necessarily be limited to any particular area or concern. So the key factor is let's try to develop that distinctive name that can be used to improve our search engine results, can be used to develop trademark rights, will avoid trademark rights, will avoid a trademark infringement action, and across all of those bases try to really provide that awareness and appeal that we're looking for. So if we were to conclude, we're going to summarize all of those kind of factors all into a similar one cohesive plan. What are we looking for when we're looking for a new name? Short, simple name, easy to pronounce and spell. Not confusingly similar to any other brand. So that means, we're not going to infringe the trademark rights of a third party. Third, it's available as a domain name, so we can use a consistent brand across all of the platforms. And finally, is not overly descriptive to promote search engine optimization. So that, at this time, concludes my, directed portion of the webinar. And I'm going to open it up to questions. And I know that I received at least one question, and so I will go ahead and read it and then do my best to answer it. So the question is, what would be the recommendation about consulting firms with long names, developing a brand DBA, doing business as, that is different and follows the guidance of the business name, short and simple, etc.? You know, I think that's a good question, and I think you know, that certainly consulting firms certainly can you know, follow what I would say is, you know, the guidance that we've presented during this webinar. One of the examples that comes off the top of my head is Accenture, and you know, they're a you know, kind of high-level consulting firm that does work in accounting and I believe engineering and technology services. You know, to me, Accenture kind of follows most of the kind of the guidelines that we presented. It's a little bit longer, 3 syllables. You know, it could, with the use of the C's, you know, possibly fall into a multiple spelling, but you know, I think generally speaking, it falls, you know, within those lines. To the extent that you have a long business name and you want to develop a brand that's different, you know, I think that is something to, you know, to consider, and that's obviously the kind of the way in which international business machines went. Obviously, very long name. Obviously, now that they're known today as simply as IBM. So, you know, I think I would, you know, encourage that transition if you're thinking about going from a name that's a little bit more longer, not necessarily falling in line with some of the guidance, that you try to think about following, you know, some of the guidance that we discussed today, and then make sure your marketing is available to try to really provide that transition. So, you know, we're going to be known as X, and I believe Federal Express, you know, at one point really developed that kind of transition where they, you know, were always known as Federal Express, and then over time became that new unique shortened version of FedEx that now most of us don't even necessarily know what Federal Express might be, or that they were the original name. I hope I answered that question to your satisfaction, but I'm going to leave my email address after the conference, and certainly would be happy to follow up with you specifically. The next question, if I'm appealing to a certain gender, would the sex in the name be too generic to trademark? So I'm not sure if I completely understand the question, but if it's like unique name then gender. So say I'm trying to utilize a particular, you know, apparel possibly name with things. So, you know, you have, for example, maybe Gap Kids or Gap Women, other, you know, apparel and other things. You know, I think that additional kind of identifier, I think, provides some descriptiveness that I think is useful and beneficial in marketing, but I think I would focus as far as developing my brand around that first part of the name, whether it be in using the example that I provided, Gap. We want to focus our trademark rights, our branding, and our marketing towards that portion of the mark, and then additional descriptive type names can certainly be added and enhance the brand if necessary. And then that certainly allows there to be some expansion. Some of the things that to consider is if you brand your particular name to include a particular gender, the downside of such a plan might be is if you ever expanded outside of that gender, then you might have to go through some transition that may be overly limiting. So how does that impact what you might do moving forward? That's to be determined. So it's certainly possible to use the gender with the name. I think I would advise focusing on the first part of that name and really think about whether or not you want to include a gender or any other kind of limiting descriptive term to your brand as your part of your overall kind of marketing scheme. And once again, if that question would like to be discussed further, I'm happy to discuss that further down the road. And at this point, I will check to see. I don't think we have any other questions, but I will kind of check our other screens here. And I don't believe we do. So at this time, I want to thank you very much for participating with me. I enjoyed it. Obviously, this is something that I'm passionate about, and so if you ever have any questions or concerns, I would like to discuss them with you in more detail. If anybody wants a copy of the webinar, we're happy to provide it to you. And if anybody has a follow-up kind of question or would like just to discuss it on another time, my email address is cws@suter.com. Otherwise, at this time, we will close it down, and thank you very much. I hope everyone is staying safe and staying healthy. Thank you. Goodbye.